issues. And we're thrilled today, along with our partners at the Brooklyn Rail, to take a deeper dive into the lives and work of two amazing women, Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner and author of This Stops Today, and Valerie Bell, the mother of Sean Bell and the author of Just 23, two national leaders in the movement to end police violence, known as Mothers of the Movement. Before getting started, I'd like to introduce my colleague Malvika Jolly from the Brooklyn Rail, who's going to say a few words about the Brooklyn Rail's new social environment and their Common Ground series. Malvika.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Bryan. Thank you, Marjolaine. Thank you, Dominic. And thank you, Ms. Bell and Ms. Carr, for joining us today. When we kicked off our daily lunchtime series, The New Social Environment, way back in March as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, in the effort of shifting our operations online, not just editorially, but also to provide a space to have the vibrant community life that we've grown used to. We did so also with the hope that we would feature more conversations like the ones that we have been so lucky to have in collaboration with our friends at Theater of War over the past few months. So we were really excited to get the band back together, so to speak, and welcome you to this collaboration. The Brooklyn Rail's new series, Common Ground, has just kicked off a few weeks ago. And every Thursday at 1 p.m. leading up to the election, we'll be having conversations, hopefully just like this one, speaking with change makers, social justice practitioners, activists, people doing the real work on how we can mobilize our daily actions to radically reimagine our democracy. We're also celebrating our 20-year anniversary at the Brooklyn Rail this month, which began in October 2000 with the dream of having an alternative arts publication of the people, which would always be free and independent. And I personally can't think of any better way of honoring this tradition than spending this afternoon here together with a conversation with Ms. Bell and Ms. Carr on the Mothers of the Movement to end police violence. So we're so excited to be here. Without further ado, Bryan.
Thank you so much, Malvika. It's wonderful to be here with you and to be partnering with the Rail on today's conversation. In light of the current uprising and protests across the country and the world, catalyzed by the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade, Deion Johnson, and so many others, and galvanized again by the recent grand jury decision in Kentucky regarding the police killing of Breonna Taylor, as well as the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Black and Brown communities. It's our hope that today's discussion will generate consciousness, compassion, outrage, understanding, and positive action at this critical juncture. And now I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge my co-facilitator and the true host of today's event, Theater of War Productions community liaison, Dominic Dupont. Over to you, Dominic.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you so much. So my name is Dominic Dupont, and I am just honored, really honored to be here. And this is just special for me. This is just special. So I want to take this opportunity to just say thank you for having me, Bryan. Thank you for being a part of this amazing company. And you know, I'm positive this is going to be special. I'm connected to Theater of War Productions and Gwen Carr and Valerie Bell through a special connection that I have with my uncle, Michael K. Williams, who met Gwen some years ago and just wanted to highlight the amazing work that she was doing. And that, you know, that's so important to us and the work that we're doing here. So thank you, Bryan.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Can't wait to hear from you again very soon. Today's conversation will unfold in three parts. First, since the Brooklyn Rail has the tradition of including a poet in every lunchtime discussion in their new social environment, we've invited a young poet named Manasi Garg, who was recently named National Student Poet of the West, to kick off our exchange today by reading her poem, For Tamir Rice. Manasi is a senior at Saratoga High School in Saratoga, California, on the West Coast. And for her, as she said in her bio, her poetry is a way to translate trauma into meaning, to breathe life into untold stories and unspeakable thoughts. She often finds herself writing about her family, her experience as a second-generation Indian American girl, and the stories of her people, mostly because that's all she really knows about. This is according to her. You can find her work in the Kenyan Review, the Mercury News, and on her family's WhatsApp chat. Manasi also works as editor-in-chief for her high school's award-winning newspaper, the Saratoga Falcon. As soon as Manasi's done reading her poem, we're going to ask Gwen and Valerie to respond to what they heard in the poem that touched them and spoke to them today. And after we've heard from them, Dominic's going to engage Gwen and Valerie with a few opening questions before we turn out to you, our audience, and invite you into the discussion with Gwen and Valerie and Dominic about their tireless work on behalf of countless families who've lost children to police violence and to community violence. And when we open up the floor, we ask that you use the raise your hand function on Zoom at the bottom of your screen to indicate you have something to say. Just to be clear, we purposely disabled chat today because we'd like to invite you to join us in a dynamic and live space this afternoon. And as we all know, chat is the death of all good conversation. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Manasi, our national student poet, who will read her poem for Tamir Rice.
For Tamir Rice. I like to remember him through his mother's eyes, refused to watch the videos on the news. He loved sports and science and reading. He played with Legos and watched cartoons. He loved his mother, probably gave her hugs and kisses as she passed him in the hallway. Not a day goes by that I don't think about him. 8 years later, and we are all still mourning this unbearable loss, are all familiar with the way his name still catches in our throat. Tamir Rice, like a dewdrop in a spider's web on a cold Cleveland morning. Tamir Rice, his name deserves more than to live as an apology on our tongues, his face more than to just be a reminder of violence so cruel no language could possibly explain it. We could have been friends, Tamir and I. He was just a year older than me. Maybe we would have been lab partners, titrating unknown samples or taking notes. I wonder what his handwriting was like. Was it messy the way all the boys I love write, too interested in the world around him to pay attention to the paper in front of him? Or maybe he would have been an artist, Tamir doodling in his English essays and math homework, or Tamir playing sports, cheeks flushing like flowers unfurling on a late spring afternoon. Everything he would have been. Tamir would have graduated this year, and I am mourning this little loss too. Now he lives as an eternal eulogy in the news, his face plastered on the TV over and over again, like a record player that just keeps skipping. Blood gluing his shoes to the streets, binding him to this country. But I like to picture him running down icy streets so fast he starts to fly. I picture a world where he spreads his wings and no bullets rain down to stop him. A world where we know Tamir's face by his smile and not by his death. I think about Miss Rice often. Did you know there's no word for a parent who loses their child? We call people who lose their spouses widowers and children who lose their parents orphans, but the human tongue is not heavy enough to bear the weight of a child's body. I don't know if we believe in the same God, but I pray that wherever Tamir is, he is safe and loved. I wish for once we didn't have to politicize grief. I wish for once we did not applaud at the strength born out of sorrow, but instead made it so that mothers never have to watch their children die. I wish Tamir Rice had grown up. Maybe we would have met at college or at work. Maybe we would have met 70 years from now at a retirement home, share a drink or two, and we would talk and listen and talk, and his eyes would bloom in the sunlight, and we would have room to breathe, just breathe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manasi. If this were a live setting and the audience that's tuning in from all over the world were here, I'm sure you would hear uproarious applause, but all you have is us, and we thank you so much for your poem, for your insights, and for kicking us off today. And we're going to invite you to now sit in the audience, but with immense gratitude for what you've given us today. And thank you so much. And now we're going to turn things over to Dominic, who's going to sort of reframe our first question, and then we'll hear from Gwen Carr and Valerie Bell with their responses. Dominic.
Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate that. Wow, that was just amazing. Thank you so much, Manasi, as well. So today, I have the privilege and the honor of just co-hosting with Bryan this amazing event, and I'd like to start off with the first question that we have for today, and just sort of like rephrase it. And that question for today is gonna begin as for Gwen and Valerie. We'd like you to just like briefly introduce yourself. But what spoke to you in Manasi's poem? What was true? And we'd like to invite you to speak about that after you just open up by introducing yourself for us.
Is it any order? Hi, my name is Valerie.
Go ahead, Valerie.
Oh, sorry, I had to turn myself away because tears.
Yes, ma'am.
What spoke to me, everybody knows my name is Valerie Bell. I'm the mother of Sean Bell. Anniversary is coming up November 25th, 2006, which will be 14 years this year. And the thing that spoke to me is hearing her voice, reading this poem, trying to hold back her tears and her pain. That really spoke to me. Speaking of this young man, like she said, she is his age now, if he was living, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just painful right now, more so, of course. If I'm not mistaken, he was killed in the same month, November, as my son, Sean Bell. Going on 8 years, if I'm right, for him, 14 years for Sean. And I want to say this, he probably would have had a good life growing up. And to say this, he is well known and famous for his death. And I say that, and I always say that about my son and about other young men and women that were killed by police who were here, supposed to be here to serve and protect us. But as mothers and fathers, we will always be a voice for them. We will always not allow the public to forget our son and daughter that was killed unjustly. So that poem was beautiful. I appreciate what she did, and her having the heart to be able to write the words that she wrote is really awesome. And even though it's painful to hear, but continue to write the way you write, young lady, and people will acknowledge you for, the wonderful writing that you're doing. God bless you.
Thanks, Valerie.
Yes, my name is Gwen Carr. I'm the mother of Eric Garner. Eric was killed in 2014, and it was police violence. They choked him. They said they wouldn't release him, as he said, "I can't breathe." 11 times he said, "I can't breathe." And the disconcerted police officers refused to spare his life. And this poem was so powerful. This young lady put her all into doing this poem. And this poem, it resonates with me because just listening to her, we think about our children too in this way. We remember when they used to play at the playground. We remember when they used to be in the kitchen as we were cooking and they made us laugh or say, "Oh, is the food ready yet?" And and it's just those joyous times that we remember about our children. And this personally resonates with me because I know the mother of Tamir Rice. I have communed with her. She's been to my home. I've been there to rally with her. And so I know her pain as she knows mine. And it just says a lot about who we are as mothers with fallen children. We go on, we don't give up. We wonder what our child would have been if he had lived.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't get that chance to see how he would go about his daily life if he had lived. And just because we live in certain neighborhoods, our zip code shouldn't determine if we live.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we have to take each case personally. Just like Tamir writes, like the young lady said, she don't know where in this walk of life she might have ran into him, or who he might have ran into, or if he would have lived to be the ripe old age where he might have retired to a rest home, where he would have met other friends. That so much was taken away from this young man and our young men also, and the young men around the nation. And all these mothers are grieving. And that's why we have to collaborate. We must listen to her very carefully. And other people who are taking our children's lives, they should listen to this poem. Maybe they would think twice before they put a bullet in one of our children, a senseless bullet into our children who have done no wrong.
Wow. Gwen, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Valerie, thank you so much for that. In your book, This Stops Now, you quote Frederick Douglass, who said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. Do you think we have made progress since Eric's death in light of the additional unjustified killings at the hands of police officers? And if so, why?
Yes, Dominic, I think we have made progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. We have made progress. I'll just start from the beginning. From the time they start recognizing what a wrong they had done with my son, what an injustice this was, the country rose up and they were out there. They were outraged. They were rallying. They were saying his name. This helped to bring about change, because when there's a rally, it tells the public, it tells the nation that there is a problem and that we must address this problem. And the only way that we can address the problem is that America has to admit that there is a problem. That's the first thing that has to happen. So now, with us, the mothers of the movement, the families who goes out on weekly, monthly basis and try to get the attention of our politicians, this is what brings about change. We had to have the right people in the chairs. And if we don't think that they're for us, we must get rid of them and put the right people in there. And that's why myself, Valerie, other families, we went to Washington, we went to Albany to make change, to talk to the politicians, to ask them to co-sponsor our bills. And we didn't do it alone. We did it with other groups. We did it with the CPR. We did it with the Justice Committee. We did it with the National Action Network, with the Arc of Justice. So many people helped us to do this, because when your child is murdered, you don't know which way to go. You just have to pray on it. You have to pray that God leads you in the right direction to meet good people and put good people in your path. And so now that's why we have, as a group, we have laws that were passed, just like the Eric Garner anti-chokehold bill that was passed, the STAT Act, the right to know, the 50A law. These were all because of the collaboration of other groups. You know, we can't fight this fight alone, but we ask people to get on board, positive people to get on board with us and to support us to help make change. The change is slow, but we have to think about our ancestors. Our ancestors had less than we did, and they made it so we can be who we are today. We have schooling. We can go to school. We can be politicians. We can even be presidents. That was not even allowed in the 17th and 1800s. So we have made progress, and we're going to continue to make progress.
Wow. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Valerie, do you think we've made progress?
Well, as Gwen said, coming together, changes are being made. It does take a while. It took Martin Luther King so many years, but we don't want to give up. He didn't give up. The people gave up on him, you know, killing him for no reason because of what he stood for and what he stood for. So progress, like she said, the bills that were signed by Governor Cuomo for New York, the other changes in different states since George Floyd, and other ones that were killed before him. So progress has to be put together with the people who stand together to do the right thing. Like she said, stand on the backs of the politicians. I tell everyone, I know my politicians in my area. I'm from Jamaica, New York. I have their personal numbers. So when it's time to make phone calls, I do that. And as we always say, we're always going to keep that out there. We're going to have to keep voting. People who vote have a right to say something. People who don't vote doesn't have a right to say anything, but we should all come together as one. It's going to take time, but as she said, our forefathers didn't have all this that we have today, but they led the way for us to continue it. And I pray that the youth who are behind the elderlies right now will continue our walk in peace and decency.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Valerie. So, so for you, in your book, Just 23, I read it. Clearly, forgiveness and faith plays a large role in the healing process. And given everything that you've been through, where does the strength to forgive come from? Can you talk about your journey to healing and the role of forgiveness that has played in the process of that journey?
Well, I always say, I'm sorry I didn't say it before, to God be the glory for all he has done for me. I put him first in my life, and that's the way that I'm able to forgive. Everybody might not think that way. It does take time, even though when you forgive, you're not going to forget what happened, but truly forgiving, you will forget. Because with me, I don't talk about my son's 50 shots. I talk about the life he lived when he was alive, the life what he would have been if he was still here. Forgiving takes a whole lot, but if you believe in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, that's how I made it through. People ask me, have I been to a counselor? Which is not wrong for you to counsel, because that's a gift God has given them to counsel you through things that people have been through. But my counselor is God. I'm telling you, without him, I would not be here. Having a family to be behind me, having the women and men that I've met through this struggle. We don't want to be in these shoes. I would not wish the shoes for anyone to walk in. It is heart paining, but if you continue to stand firm on his word, he will allow you to speak, but it needs to be spoken to the people so they could get an understanding of how to forgive and how to stand as I do and Gwen do and others that has gone through an unjustly death of our loved ones.
I really appreciate that. I often think about just these terrible stories and just try to figure out how does someone cope, how does someone deal with that. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, just that's how the healing process begins, and I can appreciate that. And I also, I'm also sure being really active, helps with that process. Gwen,
Yes.
It seems like activism has played a huge role in the healing process. Can you talk about how that happened, how your quest for justice, not just for Eric and your family, but for Valerie, and for so many others, families who've lost their loved ones to police violence, and lost children to just these terrible acts of law enforcement all across the country. How has that helped you heal, Gwen?
Well, Dominic, it has helped me heal because in the beginning, I didn't know what to do, where to turn. And like Valerie said, I only knew to turn to Jesus Christ and pray to him and ask him to guide my footsteps. Because this fight is not a popular fight, but it's something that we must do. So once I got myself together and I found out how many mothers was actually out there. I had no idea that there was so many thousands and thousands of mothers who was grieving the same way that I was grieving. And some of them were so much in pain, they could not get out of bed. Some was hospitalized, and even others had attempted suicide. Some are on strong medication. So I decided to have a, you know, like every year on the anniversary of my son's death, to invite mothers and families to my commemoration so that we could gather together as a process of healing. And when we gathered like this, we didn't talk so much about the death of our child, but more about the life of our child and what he would be doing now and what we did with him. And I met mothers that people never ever heard of before. Mothers who are grieving and never got a moment in the newspaper, no social media, no anything. But some of the stories are worse than ours. You know, when you start listening to the stories, one story get worse than the others. So that's why when I have my groups together, it's not for the what people call the high profile, because in my heart, we are all high profile. So all mothers are invited to my sessions. All mothers, I think, should get attention, and we should get justice for everyone, not just for the names that you know by heart, not for just the household names. We need to say all their names, not just say Eric Garner, not just say Sean Bell, not just say Breonna Taylor, because there's so many thousands of us out there, other people just like our children out there. So we must have not only sympathy for them, we have to have empathy. And we have to help them just as well as people have tried to help us. And so I think that's part of my healing. If I can help another mother, if I could talk to another mother and she could tell me that I told her something positive, that's part of my healing. I feel good when a mother come up to me and told me that I helped her just by conversation or just by us having a meal together. You know, all of this is a healing process for me.
Wow. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Dominic,
so we're going to now turn things over to Bryan.
No, I just wanted to jump in and say how it's been so amazing listening to the conversation so far. And just to acknowledge that both Gwen and Valerie have found different but complementary ways to use their voices, both in their writing and in the world, in the service of justice, in the service of healing, in the service of bringing people together. And I'll never forget the first time we had you with us at one of our performances, and it was so clear what unifiers you are, that there's something unassailable about the perspective of a mother. It transcends all politics at a certain level. It's a superpower. It's an amazing thing to behold. I know you've probably faced all kinds of nasty things out in the world once you put yourself out there. But at our core as Americans, I believe it's very hard for people not to be touched by the grief of mothers, the perspective of mothers. And it's so powerful hearing you talk today. I want to just go a little bit back to you, Gwen, before opening it up, and Valerie, if you want to jump in. But, you know, in your book, you kind of describe this transformation within yourself from sort of being a transit worker, and you narrate it so beautifully, to becoming an activist, to finding that voice that we've just heard on the screen so powerfully. And you're the first to admit, and I've heard you say it, you didn't always have that voice. At least it wasn't clear to you that you had that voice. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about finding your voice as an activist and the role you're currently playing.
Yes, because in the beginning, before my son was murdered, I never spoke in front of audience. And then afterwards, after, you know, like it came clear to me, hey, I can't just sit here and do nothing. I have to get out there and let the world know who my son was. I have to speak up. But now I don't only want to speak up for my son. I want to speak up for the voiceless and the nameless and the faceless. We must talk about it all. And this is why I just started going around people who I used to listen to them speak. When I went to the National Action Network, I used to listen to how Reverend Sharpton used to capture his audience. And I just said to myself, I wondered if I could do that, if I could stand up and just tell the world who my son was or who my son is to me. Will they listen? Then I thought, well, I don't care if they listen or not, I'm going to say it. So I says, I'm going to get out there and hope to have a captive audience when I speak. And this is how I first started. I just would think about it. And at first I would write things down on paper, but that didn't work for me. Every time I would write something on paper to say, and I'm looking at the paper, I lose my place. So I says, I can't do this. I just have to speak from the heart and tell people the way I feel inside and bring this out of me. And that's how it all started.
It's a beautiful story.
Yes, and that, I'm sorry, that's so true, because I've always been a laid back, quiet person, as everybody said. Me just coming home, going to work, doing what I'm supposed to do for my family. But they always say, watch out for them quiet ones. But my voice, as my late Bishop Lester Williams from Community Church of Christ said, he was a sacrificial lamb, that he gave me the voice that I have today. Like Gwen said, not only speaking for our sons, but speak out for other children that lost their lives unjustly. Like I said, when it first started, I stayed home for 7 years. And the number of 7 spiritually is completed. So my 8th year in 2016, I came out. I came out with this book, Just 23, and everybody thinks it's a story about Sean, but it's not. That was a part of my healing. I sat at my desk at work, started talking to my goddaughter, who's a co-author, and as I'm talking, she's writing. And that was a part of my healing. I said, enough is enough. I have to speak out to be the voice, not only for Sean Bell, but to help be the voice of others. As Gwen said, meeting these other mothers and fathers is like, wow, this is one club we don't want to be into, but we need to stand firm and speak out so people will not forget our loved ones. And it's been hard, but I do not give up. I'm just going to continue to be that voice for Sean Bell and whoever else I can help somebody to go through the things that they've gone through, the tragic loss of their loved one.
Yes, because in my book, I just wanted to tell people where I started from. I even talk about my life growing up. I talk about Eric's life, what type of life that he had, or, we were just simple family people, but it's important because people only know the news stories. They only know what they hear from the media or from the police department. We have to put the story out there, and we as their mother, as their families, we're the ones who could tell the story better than anybody else. We knew our children. They laid under our heartbeat for 9 months, and they were the closest to us. So when things like this happen, they should come to the family, to the mothers, and ask them, about their child. Not someone who never met them before.
It's really so wonderful to hear you both speak about how you found your voices through grief and through loss, and the mandate you clearly feel to use them to help others. I know Dominic can probably speak to this as well through his own work. And I'm gonna, just before I go to Dominic, to ask him to speak about that for 1 second, the sort of reciprocity between helping others and helping yourself heal, of telling your story. Some people would have maybe said, well, was it really appropriate to start this session with a poem about the loss of Tamir Rice? And, but we know you can handle it because this is your daily life. This is what you're out there, the message you're getting out there in the world. And there's this reciprocity between telling your story and healing and helping other people and healing. And it's clearly at the center of both of your work and faith. And so it's so wonderful to hear you speak about it. We're going to open up the floor now because we're exactly the time we had hoped we'd be at to bring people in from the world who are listening and part of this conversation. So if you have something you want to say, something so far has touched you, from Manasi's poem to things that Gwen and Valerie have said, just use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll promote those of you we can to the screen to join us in conversation for the latter half of our discussion. And while we're finding our first audience member to join us, I think I just saw one raise their hand right there. Dominic, I wonder if you could just sort of bridge this by talking a little bit about that reciprocity, that connection between healing and helping others, telling your story.
Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate that. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Dominic Dupont, and what's pretty interesting about my experience and how I've started my healing process is I served close to 21 years in prison at a very young age, and I have recently was released, and after serving a life sentence in prison, and I was, thankful to receive a commutation from Governor Cuomo in 2017. I was released 2 weeks later, but the healing process for me was really important at this age, where I realized that I had to just acknowledge, some of the poor choices that I made that, ultimately led to, me receiving a life sentence at a very young age, and also me just, understanding how important it was to be engaged in the work. And so since I've been released, I've had the opportunity to, work with my uncle, Michael K. Williams, who's known for some of his famous roles in The Wire, on the social justice front, and to work with Gwen and to work with Valerie, to meet, people on the state, local, and federal levels, and to see if I can become part of the solution and no longer part of the problem. And that meant for me taking the opportunity to really be engaged and connecting with so many people on this front who've experienced trauma, and understanding that the healing process begins with forgiving myself and possibly others who may have initiated that trauma. So thank you, Bryan. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Valerie and Gwen, so much.
Thanks, Dominic. Annie, thanks for waiting. I know you've been on the screen for a few minutes. We're going to go right over to you for your comments for Gwen and Valerie. Please.
I just want to say hello, and it's an honor to talk with you ladies, and your strength and your purpose. Wow, it's just amazing to witness, and it's just, again, an honor to speak with you. What I would like to say is the environment. Like, I have 2 daughters, right? I don't have a son. So if I had a son in this, as a Black woman in this time, I think I would be scared every day my child walks out the door, because this is like normal. I'm like, oh my God, like, what is going on? I guess my question is, what kind of environment needs to be in place in order to make that difficult? Like, it just seems like it's just too normal. It's too accepted. Is there anything moms in the hood, or where this type of neighborhood that we live in, that how could I have helped you or help a mom in that predicament? I don't know if I'm making sense, but how can the moms in the neighborhood or the women in the neighborhood band together and look at everybody as our children? And I think that would just make it so difficult for this to happen going forward if we live in a community where every child in this community is my child. And if this happens to someone else's child, if this happens to someone else's child, then that's very close to home. That can happen to me.
Oh, you are so right, honey. That is so true. But it's not because of all the time the community you live in. They have had children killed who live in better community, nice communities. But first of all, I think we got to pray a lot, because to stop this violence, I think that we have to heal hearts and change minds. See, once we do that, then we wouldn't have so much violence. And like you said, you have 2 daughters. Remember, they're killing women too. So it's not only the men where a lot of times it's focused on the men, but it's the girl children too. So we have to pray for them all. And I think just like you said, if we get groups together, if we had a neighborhood, a community who cared about all the children and, and address it. And as Valerie said earlier, know who your politicians are, know who your council member are, who your assembly members are, who runs your schools. Those elections are so much more important than just a big election. And we have to get everybody in those communities to vote and to take part into raising and the survival of our children. And we know it starts from us. But even what we can lay, we can dig the foundation, although the children have to build the house. But with our help, with the Lord's help, and with the community, I think that we can get through some of this. But that's a very good question that you put forward, and thank you.
So pray.
Yes, I won't be long. That's so true. We have to come together now. I'm sorry. Have to come together in our communities. Like you said, know your politicians in your community, but it takes a village to raise your children. Even though we teach our children right from wrong, they also have to continue. You have to also teach them respect. Mm-hmm. If you have, I know what community that you're from, but in my communities, we have meetings with the police departments. You have to have your voice for the police departments also, for them to listen to us, because we have to live here. They have to know our community. A lot of officers are sent to communities that they don't know about. They need to take a class of racial differences. And like Gwen said, we also have to have a change of mind, because whatever you think, it goes in your heart. I always said, you're not born to be a racist, but you're taught. So a lot of people have to come together and pray that God would change their mind so their heart could be better in the things that they're doing for their life. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, and God bless you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. Anybody else like to join us on the screen? I see Diamond Jones, who's someone we know, who's played Antigone for us in our production. Antigone Ferguson just raised her hand. So we're excited to have Diamond with us, who I think has met Gwen and Valerie in previous. Hey, Diamond.
Hi, Bryan. How are you? Hi, Dominic.
Hey,
Hi,
Diamond.
Gwen and Miss Valerie.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. It's such a pleasure to see you guys right now. Every time I hear you guys speak, it's such an honor. Like, mothers of the movement, it's literally just like, it's literally my heart. Like, I live with my grandparents, I take care of them, and like imagining like how they would feel, like because like they basically raised me, so imagining like how they would feel if something happens like me or my siblings, like my heart goes out to you. Similar to Annie's question, as like a young person, as like someone in Generation Z or like a millennial, like what is our job and role? Like, like I hear like, get to the polls, I hear voting, I hear, like get your education, I hear all these different things, but like how can we directly be involved like outside of protests? Because I'm not gonna hold you, protests are not necessarily my vibe, which is why I love theater of war, because like it gave me a space to like use my art and my craft to like, like contribute to this movement. But like how can we, like as someone who has like been here for a while, what is your suggestion to like people my age, other than just like like voting and like getting out in the streets? What can we do as young people to like stop everything or aid in the betterment of anything?
I'm sorry, as my husband always says, be that politician, be that police officer, be that judge, be that senator. Killing each other. We know the young people need to continue to be educated so they can help make a change in society today. It takes a long time for this to go through. It's okay to protest, but have a voice. Have that voice. And the main thing is stop killing each other. A lot of our young folks, our Afro-American people kill each other. Why? That's what they want to see. Bad enough the police officers are killing us, but we need to stop that. Come together in your community. Try to find some place to have a forum. A lot of communities don't have programs. We need to bring that together to bring the young people off the streets when they come out of school. They need to have things to do to keep them busy so their mind can work better for the community that it's needs. Thank you so much.
Yes, that is so true. And just like you're doing in your space, that's a positive function that you're doing. Maybe you could bring young people into doing what you're doing, into theater, or maybe it don't have to always be theater, but it could be some sort of art that they know, and that this keeps the mind busy. This keeps them on a positive level. Everybody doesn't protest. Everybody has a function. You have some people who that's their function, to protest. Other people, they like to write poetry. Other people, they like to get communities together and form groups. Other people like to talk about voting. Everybody has a function, and all these functions together makes a body, you know? So we all don't have to do the same thing to come to the same conclusion of what we want in life. So what you're doing, I think, is very positive. And, you know, just bring people with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Diamond. You know, most people don't know that in addition to being an amazing actress and singer, Diamond's also a fashion designer. And so I'm hoping that Gwen and Valerie's words today continue to galvanize her to make her fashion. Every single week she designed her own clothes for playing Antigone in our production for 10 weeks. And I'll never forget just waiting to see what she was going to come up with next. So there's no question that Diamond has so many things to contribute, and we're just grateful that you could join us. So good to see you.
I see.
So good to see you too.
Definitely.
And
Thanks,
you
Diamond.
do have some very nice designs. She got to come design something for me.
I got to.
All right.
I was just about to say the same thing, Gwen. Something for the elderly. Thank you.
That's what's
You
up.
heard it here. The next time you see Gwen and Valerie, you think, who designed that amazing
Put
dress?
that together.
Yes.
Know that it was Diamond Pearl Jones, who made that happen. Wilhelmina, you're next. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. Hello. Now, I said that I was not going to start crying, but y'all will forgive me if I do.
That's all right.
First, the young lady who wrote the poem, that was a oh my goodness, a powerful piece. And the line that really struck me was, and I think I have it right, the tongue cannot bear the weight of a child's death. And I cannot, I mean, first of all, I'm totally blown away that she has the sight to see that and the skills to put that kind of pain into words. And it just brings, I don't have children. So I cannot even imagine what it would be like to lose a child, and to lose a child in such an inhumane and for me, barbaric kind of way. I have so much admiration for you two ladies, because y'all are here now, so I might as well just give you some accolades while I can see you. But for all of the mothers who have gone through this and hadn't, you know, they just haven't gone, you know, totally ballistic and returned like for like. I appreciate the conversation about forgiveness, because when things like this happen to others, there's an anger that will arise in me, and it's like, but I know I'm, you know, like the young lady said, I'm not into protesting, because nobody, that part about turn the other cheek, no, that ain't me, all right? And so I you know, I try to stay in my lane. And what you were saying about, and during the conversation, what repeatedly showed up for me was it takes a village to raise a child. And part of their rearing is to, okay, let me see if I can hook this up right. We have to get involved into the systems. In the meantime, we also need to, I must participate in the building of systems that affirm the dignity of the human being. I grew up in the South, in Selma, Alabama.
Same as my husband.
Oh, really? All right, now let's not be kinfolk here.
All right.
And one of the things that when I think back is Selma, Alabama at that time was extremely segregated. But we were in this cocoon, I call it a cocoon of care. So in addition to creating this cocoon of care, we've got to, and I've got to participate in building the things that extend this cocoon out into the world that our children will need to go out into. There is just so much. The respect that's due the mothers, you too. And then to think about how grief gives you the power to find your voice. It opens up those things. It breaks down, in my mind, because I'm thinking about my own grieving about things. We create these roles, these barriers around ourselves. Oh, I'm a just to this, or I'm a just to that, and grief and pain and anger can tear down those walls, and we start to uncover these marvelous gifts that have been laying dormant. And it's almost as if the anger and the rage gives me the courage to finally say, like, who is it? One of y'all said in your book, enough. This is, I think, Miss Valerie, you said that, enough. I don't know who wrote this poem, rage against the dying of the light. We have to rage against it, but in a way, like, it's like, I can't try to be something that I'm not. I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a talker. I can do all those kinds of things, and like as what was suggested, I need to also look at who's somebody I can help. It doesn't necessarily have to be a young kid, because if they can't walk and they can't talk and they can't go to the bathroom by themselves, I ain't gonna be bothered with them. But I can engage myself in that community that raises children to be resilient, to be respectful of the image of God that's stamped on every human being. Oh my goodness. You know what? I can't stand y'all theater of war. I can't. Y'all be putting stuff on my mind and in my heart that is just so, it is just so wonderful. So, it's just, whew.
Thank you, Wilhelmina. I really appreciate it. People say we're going to have a conversation. This is going to be a Q&A or conversation, but usually it's a one-way stream. I like the idea that we can be together just thinking out loud together, the way you just modeled. You don't have to be like, it doesn't have to be perfectly formed. You can actually be present with your thoughts, and we can stay present with you as you speak out loud and think out loud. That's what our model is about, and you just cut right to the heart of it. There is a grief, a pain, an anguish that cuts through all politics, a suffering that all Americans at some core level share. We've seen it in red state America. We've seen it in the most conservative parts of America. I know you've seen it in Alabama, probably. It exists. And if we tap it, and the mothers of the movement are touching it in this really way, so many of the barriers fall away. And then there's this opening, and we can have this conversation that wouldn't necessarily be possible with people radically different from the people on the screen right now who want to have this conversation. We only have time for maybe one more person, so I'm going to ask Marjolaine just to promote one more person to the screen, and then we'll ask a brief final question. We like to keep things on time at Theater of War Productions, leave you wanting more, and if you want more, I think I should just plug Gwen and Valerie's books one more time. Just know that they're amazing. This stops now in just 23.
This stops today.
Excuse me. This stops today. I didn't have my notes in front of me. This stops today, and just 23 amazing texts. Of course, if you're interested in reading more about Manasi, look up the National Student Poets Program run by the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards and ILMS, and you can find her work online as well. 3 amazing writers with us today. Wendy, we're going to go to you, and no pressure to say everything super succinctly, but you're going to be our last person on the screen, and we only have time for a couple minutes.
Yes, I thank the audience who took the time to listen in and have this conversation with us. And I would hope that you all would read my book, This Stops Today. It tells the story about me, what I was doing before Eric's death, during Eric's death, and what I'm doing now. And I also have a foundation, the Garner Foundation.org. And it tell you what we're doing, and we ask you all to support us in what we do so we can keep this movement alive and keep it running, because we're here for the long run and we're not going away.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Before we go to Valerie for a last word, Wendy, do you want to throw out your question or comment, please?
Yeah, I just, to Ms. Carr and Ms. Bell, so inspiring the work that you're doing. And I know this is a group that you didn't want to be in and that you've really stepped up. And I want you to know it's touched. I mean, you know how many people it's touched. I want to say, as a white mother, I know that I never have to worry in that same way about my daughter because of the color of her skin being killed by a police officer. And I've never had to have the talk with her about how to act around a police officer. And I could go in another short time, how many different privileges that I've had, and that these should not be privileges, these are human rights. And that I feel, at this time, there's a real, we all, it's not, like Annie said, the mothers have to get together. White mothers have to be in this too. We all, what's happening, if it's not okay for you, it's not okay for me. We all have to get involved in this. And I think many people are starting to. Yes. This can't go on. This is not okay. I know it doesn't affect me in the same way, but witnessing it and knowing that we can do so much better in this country and we need to. And I know that there's a whole history of this that got us here, but that history has also had little bits of time where people woke up and got better. And I hope and pray that this is a time like that now, that we can turn this around. And just 2 quick things. And Dominic, also, so much kudos to you for trying to turn things, having a positive attitude. I can't imagine what you went through for 21 years in jail, and for you to want to come out and do good and inspire other people in your situation. That's wonderful. And Diamond, I saw you in Antigone and you were amazing. So I love that. And
thank you so much, Wendy.
And yeah, the poem was amazing.
We brought Manasi up so we could also acknowledge her before the end of our discussion. But Valerie, do you have any closing words you want to leave us with? I'd love to.
Yes, real quick. Thank you, Theater War, Dominic, Bryan, for having me to speak out again. And when the young lady spoke about beforehand about forgiving, with me, forgiving clears my heart, so I can do what I'm doing now. So I appreciate you for all the work you've done and continue to do the work that you're doing now. And God bless you all.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Valerie.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Manasi. Thank you all who joined us on the screen, those who joined us just to view today. This is not the end. We didn't come here to tie a bow on the conversation. We know this could go on for another 5 hours, and it should, and it will, hopefully, in your places of work and worship and in your homes, and people that may not have been part of the conversation today. And this conversation will be posted online later today, and you can send it to people and keep spreading the message of the mothers of the movement across the country and the world. And we hope you'll use it as a tool to do that. We also hope that you'll join us at Theater of War Productions for our upcoming performance of Antigone and Ferguson on Saturday night. at 6 p.m. Antigone with a Baltimore focus. You can find the link to that on our website, theaterofwar.com. You can register for free. And you can also follow us on social media at Theater of War, and stay on top of our schedule about events like this, and also see videos and clips of events like this and other events we put out. We invite you to come back and engage with us and with the mothers. We have 3 more mothers of the movement who'll be joining us on Saturday night, mothers from Maryland and Baltimore who lost children to police violence. That's thanks to Gwen Carr continuing to connect us with mothers across the country, and we're so grateful to her and to Valerie for all the work that they've done. We also hope you'll come back and check out the Brooklyn Rail's new social environment and their Common Ground series. We have an election coming up in 2.5 weeks. I think we could be talking 24 hours a day in the way that we did today, and it still wouldn't scratch the surface of the work that needs to be done to make sure that we end up on the right end of history in the next 2.5 weeks, the next 3 months. And so we're sending out strength and love and hope that we can all find our voices the way that Valerie and Glenn have and Manasi has, and use them in this critical period leading up to our election and after it to bring about healing and unity and also action and justice. And with that, I just want to thank all of you again. It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for partnering with Theater of War Productions. And thank you to the mothers of the movement. If we were in a live setting now, there would be uproarious applause. It would be deafening, but all you have is us on the screen, sending our best wishes, prayers, and love to you. Thank you so much. We will see you all very soon. Thank you again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. How? Yes.
Thank you so much.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
And blessings to all of you, and thank you all for making this possible. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Bryan, you're a bad boy.
I want everyone to know we're ending on time, but we'll see you on Saturday and the next one. Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you all.
God bless.
Bye. Thank you.
God bless. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.